on catch up to 1 week later, because we've got a few of these different courses running. The storage runs out after a little while, so it'll be available to watch as many times as you like up to 1 week later. The money that you've donated for registering, donated is a strong word, you had to pay to register, but the money that's raised for this is going to a very worthwhile charity which Tom has chosen, which is Sea Shepherd, and there's a link on your registration for more information about that. So just for a hand over to Tom. Tom is actually currently sitting on his 35-foot yacht. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Tom, how do you pronounce the name of your yacht?
Noctiluca. She's called Noctiluca. Yeah, essentially it's Nocti stands for night and Luca means light, and it's that biophosphorescence, that phosphorescent algae you get at night. It's the Latin name for that. It's a pretty magical thing. Yeah. Noctiluca.
I'm glad I didn't even attempt to do that. So Tom and his wife are based in the Caribbean at the moment. They are both adventurers and both very much into their free diving. Tom's a fully qualified AIDA diving coach, and he'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. And he's running free diving courses out in all over the world, but currently in the Caribbean. And he is a very accomplished free diver, currently in the top 10 longest breath within the UK. And I know there's a few people here from a mixture of backgrounds, including swimmers, divers, spear fishermen, all the rest of it. There's the information, he's been through this with me before, and I spent a lot of time in the water, and it is fascinating. I learned a great deal from it, so I'm really looking forward to this evening. So I'm going to hand over to you, Tom, and as I say, as we go through any questions, pop it in the chat or raise your hand and we'll stop periodically and go. So thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much, Steve. Fantastic. So nice to be here. Could you maybe stick me on a pin, and then I'll be pinned on people's screens. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen with you all and go through a few bits and bobs. So let me see if this works. I've got some nice little slides here. This is really Freediving 101. It's a short intro course to the full course that I'm running in July, as I said, but even if you just do this little course that we're going to do this evening, I really hope it's going to be valuable and worthwhile for you. So yeah, let's just start with the basics. What is freediving? Well, it's a really simple thing to get your head around. It's any time that you're snorkeling along and you take a deep breath, hold your breath, and you dive down. At that point, you're freediving. It's as simple as that. It's like there's no scuba, there's no tanks involved, but as soon as you're holding your breath underwater, swimming around, you're freediving. And so this course is really aimed at people making that transition from starting to maybe go snorkeling or just exploring in the ocean and starting to feel more confident diving down a little deeper and maybe for a little longer. This course isn't in place of a proper freediving course, okay? So the best thing is that, if you want to learn freediving is to go and actually do it. But this nevertheless will give you some of the theory, some of the practice, best practice, and teach you some essentials that I really wish I'd known when I first started. So that's kind of what freediving is. And I'll come back to that one in a minute. So this is me. I'm a freediving instructor. I'm also a sea kayak leader, beach lifeguard. I spent my whole life teaching outdoor sports, really, and I love nothing more than being in the ocean. So that's me. And as Steve said, I'm captaining in my own little boat. Set off from 2 years ago from Wales and sailed down through France, Spain, Portugal, and out here to the Caribbean. So that's me. So this course, these are going to be the learning outcomes by the end of just this course. So you're going to get everything, all right? But it's going to have to be brief on each little bit. Essential safety. So what are the absolutely essentials things that you need to know if you're going to start holding your breath and diving down and exploring underwater? I'll cover those. I'm going to look at the breathing cycle specifically for freediving. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how oxygen moves around the body, but there will be a couple of little graphs here and there. So I hope that's, I hope you enjoy them and you feel like I do, that they're worthwhile knowing about. I mean, basically, you guys, I did everything wrong for many, many years, and I just about got away with it. I'm going to tell you a story of when I was in Indonesia before Lou and I got married. So we're talking 22 years ago now. I know we recently celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. Yeah, it was about 22 years ago. We were in Indonesia on holiday. And I'd never really done much freediving, but it was so clear and I could see the bottom, and I had Luke's dive watch on, and I was trying to go as deep as I could as a young man, 20 years old, you know. And I dived down, and I was having a look around, and I was loving it. And I managed to work out how to equalize and everything. But after one of my dives, and I arrived back at the surface, I was really close to blacking out. I mean, I felt the black coming in, and it was just Lou and I. We weren't with anyone. We didn't have a float. We weren't with a boat. We'd actually swum out over this reef through the surf to get to this deep water. And looking back, it was probably one of the most dangerous things I ever did. And I was so lucky not to have actually passed out, because if Lou, she would have been in real trouble to sort me out at that point. And that's really what motivates me to run this course, to teach you some basic stuff and some really good knowledge about how to go and have adventures by all means, but to do it with a bit more safety. So yeah, essential safety, breathing cycle, equalization techniques. I'm going to touch on those. Haven't got a huge amount of time, but there'll be a whole workshop on equalization techniques in the course. And then freediving techniques. I've got some little bits of clips of video that I've taken so that we can see all the different stages of the freediving, of the duck dive and that sort of thing. So hopefully that'll be useful. And then risks and rescue, again, touch on that. So I'm going to, for my own real benefit, you don't need to take notes because this is going to be recorded. Just sit back and enjoy. If you've got questions, put them in the chat and I'll by all means take questions. But for my own benefit, I'm going to follow this little acronym here. So being better. So it's all about being better at freediving. And the first #1 thing is to have a buddy with you, and not just anyone, but someone who at least has the same amount of knowledge that you'll have at the end of this little taster, hopefully even more. So this is about having someone with you. And this essentially comes down to the fact that if you pass out in the water, initially nothing bad is going to happen. Cut a long story short, you're not going to probably, if you pass out from holding a breath, you're not going to take in any water, but you'll be passed out in the water, probably face down. At that point, unless there's someone with you, you're in real trouble. And so I don't know if there's any spearfishing people in the room or people who go out on their own, but if you're going to start holding a breath and diving down, even to shallow depths, really must have someone with you who knows what they're doing. It's an absolute basic, and we teach it on every single freedive course that I run. It's at the forefront. So that's a buddy. The next thing, I'm not going to loiter on that too long, is the equipment and environment. Now, again, in this 1 hour, I haven't got time to teach you all about how to look at the weather forecast, to choose the right place to go. Steve runs excellent courses on interpreting that for you guys, so wild swimmers. Many of you have probably done his courses already. But essentially, if you've got it needs to be super sheltered with no current, no waves, no wind, no tide. Like, it needs to be the best of conditions for freediving, really. If you're going to be going snorkeling, that's probably good conditions for freediving. Hey, so you know, use your common sense there. I'm not going to go into more detail than that. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about equipment. Let's see if my mouse will work here. It's going to. Let me do that. Yeah. Okay. So let me go up here to exit there. Yeah. Well, back on Zoom. Am I still pinned on the screen there, Steve? Can you see me?
Yeah, Tom, you're big in the screen. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we'll start with essentials. So if you've got your buddy with you, your person who you're going to be like going out there and having a go at freediving with. Let me just make something else really clear, is that this course is aimed at you diving down 6-8 meters max. Even if you've done more than that in the past, that's not what this particular course is about. It's about getting you perhaps a little bit more confident to take those first steps and start diving down a bit deeper. So you've got your buddy. The next thing is going to be a float. Now, I've got a really basic one here. And this is really the absolute minimum of what you're going to need. Okay, so this needs to be on the surface. You need to take it with you. I have a rope tied to mine, which goes around my waist. Most of you wild swimmers will have these sorts of things. And the float is fantastic for 2 reasons. It's going to give you a place to be if you're struggling for whatever reason, and to do your recovery breathing, which I'll come to in a minute. And also, it's going to make you visible in the water, so don't get run over. It's a basic, you know, absolute basic, so you don't get run over by a powerboat or something. So a buddy and a float, absolutely essential. In terms of other equipment, really, freediving is quite nice. It's relatively minimal kit required. Probably the most important thing is going to be your mask. Some people don't even use a mask, but for freediving, we have these low profile masks there's not much air can be inside the mask. They're quite low profile and they're very flexible and they've got a good flexible nose piece. But the good news is any mask will do to start with. If you've got a snorkeling mask that's comfy for you, even if it's a really big wide one, the snorkeling masks are generally good for seeing lots of things. Freediving masks are better for smaller airspace and for minimizing drag. But a freediving mask is, it's important so that you wear one that it's comfy and that it's flexible. We use a very basic snorkel for freediving, okay? So my snorkel that I use, and the reason for that is because every time we take a breath, and I'll remind you of this in a bit, we take a breath, we remove our snorkel before we dive down. This is another absolute must. The reason for that is that after you've dived down, this is essentially a tube full of water. And if it's still attached to your mouth when you surface, there's a greater chance that you're going to get a mouthful of water when you surface. So before we dive down, we always remove the snorkel. And so because of that, it's here just flapping about. I just tuck it under my mask. I have no clip. I keep it very basic. And the good news is for that is they're super cheap. There's no valve. There's no purge valve because we're not going to be clearing our snorkel. It's not snorkeling, it's freediving. That's the difference. There's no big valve at the end here. It's just super basic, cheap, easy, free. And so, but again, if you've got one with a purge valve and a big fancy thing on the end, fine, it'll work. It's just the cheaper ones are better. I'll tell you what won't work for freediving is the big face masks with the big tube at the front. You can't equalize, you can't pinch your nose with those. So I'd recommend against those. What else? Fins. Again, any fins will do, but I use these nice long ones because they give me a helping hand to get down to make my duck dive. And they're flexible. These ones are made of plastic and they're fantastic. Honestly, these took me all the way through to my instructor qualification and down to, I think I've been to 50 meters with these ones, 50 meters of depth. And I do have some carbon ones I wear for personal best attempts these days, but these are fantastic and they feel ridiculously long to start with. But they're great, really flexible foot pockets. I tend to wear socks inside here or nothing. So make sure they're going to fit with what you need in terms of your wetsuit and stuff. So that's your fins. What else? Okay, weights. Alrighty. Now this might scare some of you. You might think, well, why on earth am I going to be putting on weights to go snorkeling, freediving? But I would heartily recommend you to wear weights. I really would. Now, how much is the key? Okay, because you definitely don't want to be sinking at the surface. All right, you want to have, and an easy rule of thumb for this is if you are on the surface and you've got your weight on, and you do a passive exhale, that is to say that you gently exhale some air like this, then you should still be floating. You should still be floating with your nose really above the water. And if you start to sink, then you can just gently fin back up again and take off one of your weights. You're too heavy. That's a general rule of thumb. Another rule of thumb is 1 kilo per millimeter of wetsuit. It kind of depends on how big you are and how heavy you are. I've got 3 kilos on here, and out here in the Caribbean with my 3mm wetsuit, that works really well. And so when I passively exhale on the surface, I'm still floating, even having exhaled. And really, I want to be floating anywhere from 10 meters and up. 10 meters of depth and up. And remember, this course is not about going deeper than 10 meters. If you didn't do that, then you really should be with someone who knows really what they're doing, have a different setup, have a rope and a line and all that stuff. But I would say wear a weight. Yeah, Steve, you saying something there?
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. Why does depth make a difference in terms of the amount of weight you have or how floaty you are?
We generally, as a rule, always weight ourselves to be neutrally buoyant at 10 meters, as a rule. If you're going to start diving more than 30, 40 meters deep, then you might want to weight yourself even to be floating up from even deeper than that, so from 15 meters. But of course, as you go down, well, this is something I discovered in Indonesia as well. As you get down to around, with this much weight on, to around about 10 meters, you start to become negatively buoyant. In that, if you stop doing anything, you slowly start to sink, and that becomes more pronounced as you go 12 meters, 15 meters, 17 meters. Again, it's beyond the remit of this course, but this is why it's really important to wear the right amount of weight. But to wear weight, because if you don't wear any weight, it's really hard to make that dive down. And the last bit of kit, obviously, if you're watching from the UK or anywhere where there's cold water, you've got to stay super warm. Freediving, we have these. I mean, I have a 2-piece freediving suit with a hood built in. It's sort of really stretchy material. Elios make fantastic freediving suits, but again, any wetsuit that you've already got will do if it keeps you warm. But you want to err on the side of being really warm. Okay, being really warm, because in between diving down, you're going to want to relax, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So that's equipment. I'm going to stop briefly and take any more questions on equipment or environment. It's, as I said, it's going to be a whistle-stop tour because in 1 hour I want to get onto the good stuff. And yeah.
Yes. Ben's just asked the question. I mean, could you use sandbags for weight?
Honestly, it's best to have a proper weight belt which has a quick release on it. So no. I mean, diving, some people have a diving harness with bags of lead shot that they put in pouches, but they're not so good. You want to have just a waist weight belt that has, this one has a buckle, but that's still considered to be quick release. And of course, if there's any issues or if this gets caught on something, you can just take it off. It's not part, you just take it off, let it drop. It's not important. They're not that expensive, you know. So no, you need a weight belt with a quick release.
Okay, and Jen's just asking, she heard something about air cells in wetsuits filling with water after specific depths. Do you know anything about that?
Generally, wetsuits will become more and more compressed as you go deep. But again, the depths that we're talking about now is not going to be a problem. It really isn't. It's not like you're going to suddenly drop down deep or anything. As I said, as a general rule, for all wetsuits, 1 kilogram per millimeter of wetsuit. But you might want to err on the side of being too light. You know, so if you're wearing a 5 mil suit, start with 4 kilos and see how that feels. 3 or 4 kilos. Breathe out. You should be really floaty, and see if you can dive down. So yeah, the wetsuit will compress, but it's minimal, and it's, you know, you start to worrying about how compressible a wetsuit is when you're getting into World Championship standard freediving, which is again.
I guess the reason that you're using weights, I'm guessing from what you said, is to make it, to save energy for going under the water, so you're not having to use loads of energy to get down, so you can hold your breath for longer. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And freediving is it's one of the most amazing sports because it teaches you how to relax. And I'll talk about this now. You have to really be super relaxed before you start your breath hold. And you're trying to maintain that relaxation. So the less weight, the more buoyant you are, the harder you have to try to get down, the more oxygen you're using, the faster your heart's pumping, and the less time you're going to be able to enjoy being underwater. You understand? So we're trying to weight ourselves so that we're making it a bit easier for us to get underwater and be down there and enjoy the kelp or the wildlife or whatever it is we're going down there to have a look at. Or just the sensation of being underwater, which is fabulous. Any more? I'm going to share my screen again unless there's any more questions.
That's it so far.
On that. Alrighty, so that's environment and equipment. Some of you might recognize this photo as of a what's it called? Portuguese man of war. Yeah. All the photos on this slideshow are taken by Lou, but this is again something to be aware of. If you're not sure about marine life in the UK, generally you're fine. These guys do sometimes blow in on the shore, and they can give a nasty sting. So, you know, talk to lifeguards, talk to people who know about the water, about what's going on in your area, and keep your eye out. Make sure that you know, just that you're aware of your environment, you know. So that's kind of buddy and environment and equipment. We've done the first part of that. These three are really easy to remember. Just inform someone on where you're going. So the two of you and your buddy, you're going to go off for a snorkel. You're going to go and do some free diving together. You've got your floats, you've got all the equipment together. You're going to go and have a go somewhere super sheltered where it's not too deep. Just let someone know where you're going, what time you're going to be back. It's just basic, right? So, and then, you know, if anything happens, they know where to come and find you. Never dive unhealthy. Now, it seems really obvious, but particularly this is to do with congestion, I guess, in your sinuses and in your nose, because if you try and force an equalization, we'll talk about what that is in a bit if you don't know, then you can cause trouble when you're coming back up to the surface. It can cause pain and trouble if you're congested. So if you've got a cold, you're not feeling 100%, just don't dive unhealthy. Don't go, you know, just wait until you're feeling good again, and go easy. You know, it's not about pushing for your personal best and seeing how deep you can go, for how long you can go. You can do that when you're with an instructor and you have a rope in place and you've got safety divers and you've got all the rest of that kit with you. But if you're just going out with your buddy and practicing, just take it easy, go easy. Most of the accidents and emergencies that come from freediving is people trying to push it too hard. So that's about being better. That's the being bit. And then this is going to be the better bit. Okay, so the first thing is breathing. I first want to talk about hyperventilation. Now, this is something that I also got really wrong when I was younger, and all the way up until I'll be honest, about 2 years ago. I thought that if you breathe more, that your oxygen levels will go up. But the truth of the matter is that's not the case. Okay, if I was to measure your oxygen level now, any one of you put a little oximeter on your finger which measures your oxygen level in your blood, it would be 96 to 99% all the time. Now that's because our bodies are really good at keeping that oxygen level at really close to 100%. So if we're breathing more, we're not actually adding any oxygen. It's basically like taking your car to the garage if it's on full and trying to put more fuel in. It's just going to be spilling all over the place. It's just not going in. We can't get more oxygen in. So what does hyperventilation do? Well, it doesn't store more oxygen, but what it does do is it reduces the level of CO2, which is carbon dioxide, and that's bad. I'll explain why in a minute. I want to make this bit absolutely clear, and here's where we're going to go into some graphs. Okay, so some of you might have heard of like the Wim Hof method and things like that, which is great for getting up your body temperature and your heart rate and so on and so forth. But in terms of freediving, it really has no place in freediving. Freediving is all about relaxing, and your breathing should be very much during that relaxation phase what we call tidal breathing, which is almost like as if you were asleep breathing. It's like, letting your body do its own thing and breathing in a very relaxing way. If we reduce our CO2 in our bodies, our carbon dioxide, by hyperventilating, all that it does is it stops us getting the urge to breathe. So I feel like we don't feel like we need to breathe. Now that's a bad thing, and I'll explain why. Because we want to feel like we need to breathe when we're holding our breath. Even if we're snorkeling along, we hold our breath and we dive down, we need to want to feel that we need to breathe. That's good. If you feel like I want to breathe, then that's good. You want to come back to the surface and breathe. If you remove that urge to breathe by hyperventilating first, then you can be down there holding your breath for very comfortably, but then all of a sudden with no warning, blackout. Okay, so this is why it's so dangerous. So this is why we never hyperventilate before we dive down. Also, hyperventilation raises your heart rate. Okay, so you can see my little diagram I made here. I'm very proud of these diagrams. It took me ages. Increased heart rate, reduced CO2 in the yellow, and the Bohr effect is the last one. Now this is for the scientists out there. It basically, if you hyperventilate, it actually binds together the oxygen and the hemoglobin more strongly. So what that means is whilst you're holding your breath, you can't get that oxygen to unbind from the blood into your system, which as with what you need it to do, to use that oxygen. And so by hyperventilating, you're even reducing the amount of oxygen that's available to you. So it's just bad all the way through. Okay, so I hope I've made that really clear. It also reduces blood flow to the brain. So hyperventilation is a big no-no. Here's the graphs. This is like a normal breath hold, and this is a good breath hold. So we're going to be relaxed at the surface. Along the bottom axis is time, and on the upwards axis is essentially levels of gas, let's say. So we're starting off with a nice purple line, the oxygen. Okay, arterial oxygen saturation starts off nice and high, 99%, even when we're very relaxed. We then hold our breath. We begin to hold our breath, and the time starts running along the bottom graph. I should probably do it this way because you're probably looking at it that way. And we hold our breath. And as we hold our breath, the level of CO2, the orange line, starts to increase, the level of CO2 in our bodies, that carbon dioxide. The reason being is because every little thing we do, even a thought, when you think about it, it's quite amazing, is a movement, because something has to move in our brains. And that even that little thought will create a little bit of CO2, a little bit of carbon dioxide. Certainly moving our muscles, finning down, doing anything like that, it creates CO2. And so we can't help it. We create CO2 whilst we're holding our breath. So the level goes up. And then we reach a level, which is on this graph called our max tolerance. Now, this is where we start to get quite a strong urge to breathe. And we start to be like, I want to breathe, I want to breathe. And that's good. We've reached our max tolerance of CO2, and we can train this. We can push this further, but I'll come on to that later. But let's say we've reached our max tolerance. And at that point, we come back to the surface, the little orange line, and we take a nice deep breath of oxygen, and we're still conscious, and that's where the breath hold ends. And we had a great time. And folks, we still had plenty of oxygen left. You can see before we reach that blackout line of less than 45% oxygen. For most people, this orange dotted line with the arrow on it is around about, with a bit of training, around about at least a minute and a half before you're getting a proper urge to breathe. But even if it's 30 seconds, that's plenty to dive down to 6 to 8 meters and back again, very relaxed. Okay, so I'll say that again. even if you can hold your breath for only 30 seconds, then you can, in a very relaxed way, following all the right protocols, dive down, equalize a few times, reach 6-8 meters, and slowly float back up in a very relaxed way. 30 seconds is easy, 10 meters even. Okay, so the next graph is if you hyperventilate, all you've done is the oxygen's still the same, you've reduced your CO2. By hyperventilating, all you're doing is you're getting rid of carbon dioxide, and then you hold your breath, and then the time starts running again. And look what happens here. You don't reach your CO2 max tolerance. You don't reach that bit where you feel like you need to breathe until suddenly you black out. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually worse than this, because if you've been paying attention, the Bohr effect, remember, is such that the oxygen is bound to the hemoglobin, it won't release. So we actually have less oxygen available to ourselves. So we're actually going to black out even sooner than we thought we might. Okay, so, you know, this is the basics of freediving. It's like relax. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the breathing cycle. So how do we make the most of the fact that we want to be relaxed? And how do we ensure that we have a nice maximum breath hold safely? That's the key, isn't it? So I'm going to talk about, this is the phase, right? And it starts with obviously relaxation, one full breath, snorkeling, pre-equalization, duck dive, breath hold, and then recovery breathing. So I'm going to dive into two things now with a little video of my wife Lou. First thing is, how do we do one full breath? And feel free to butt in, Steve, if there's any questions, but I'll just keep.
I've got a couple, Tom. Just before you get into the video. So one from Sheila, a really good question, asking about wearing earplugs. So if you wear earplugs and you're going down to depth, is that potentially going to cause a problem with equalization?
It is, if they're the cheap ones with no hole in them. So you can get surf ears, which have got a little membrane in, which is flexible. But essentially, you want your eardrum is flexible for that reason, that you don't want the earplugs to get sucked into your ear as you're going down effectively. So earplugs are generally not worn for freediving. But if you have ear trouble, you need to keep your ears dry, then you can get really good earplugs that allow that transfer of air from between the outside of your ear canal and the eardrum. We'll talk a little bit more about ears and equalization in a bit, and I hope that you'll see what I'm talking about there. I'll answer the question more fully when we come to that.
One more question. I'm sorry. A good one from Anna here. Just asking, like, how reliable do you think the 45% is in terms of for lots of different people? I guess it's a bell-shaped curve, but medical data has a variety, a large standard deviation, and it might vary from person to person. What do you think about that in terms of personal limits?
Yeah, so the good thing is that if you get into freediving, then what we train our own personal limits by doing something called static breath holding, and this usually takes place in a pool or very, very sheltered water, waist deep, and you can statically hold your breath in water. You can do this on the couch, and again, the course is going to have a whole session on how to improve your breath hold, how to do maximum breath hold safely on your own. Essentially, you need to find your own level. You need to reach that level of discomfort. That real level of discomfort, that's like not panic, I need to breathe, but get through that control with your mind, that panic, and then reach the true urge to breathe. And that's probably going to come at around a minute and a half. Some people as late as 3 minutes, but they reach that urge to breathe, and then they start to get contractions, and then you start to need to take a breath. Now, when you take your breath after you've held your breath for a really long time, you might start to get some cyanosis, blue lips and things like that. And these are warning signs that your oxygen levels did get too low. But we can train that in a very controlled environment with freediving, which is one of the things actually I love to do. Most freedivers don't like to practice static, but as Steve said, it's one of the things I love to do the most. And I've reached a 6.5 minute breath hold doing just that, just training with my wife. I feel really comfortable floating there in the pool and training that. So yes, the answer is everyone is different, and the answer is, without hyperventilation, to go through that discomfort and discover where your limits are and come out and breathe. And then once you've done your recovery breath, actually I could have held it on for another 30 seconds maybe, or 15 seconds, and you train and you get better at it. And you could also become better at tolerating the carbon dioxide, which feels horrible. When you hold your breath and you want to breathe, it feels like, you know, your brain really screams at you to hold your breath, but you can train to become better at dealing with that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to move on because we've got a lot of content. probably too much, but it's better to have too much than too little. I want to deliver as much as I can on this course, guys, because maybe you can't attend the course or you don't want to come on the course. But so this is a video of Lou, and she's going to be doing the two. Actually, let me pause this for a second. This might be a little bit juttery on your screen, but it'll serve a purpose. So there are two parts of the one full breath which we bring together. The first part is belly breathing. Obviously, we're not breathing our bellies, we're just moving our bellies up and down to allow the diaphragm to expand the lungs into that area of our abdomen. All right, so it's still all lungs, but I'm just going to get Lou to show you what that looks like. This is normal speed. And you should see that she's just doing belly breathing. And this is something that's really great to practice. It's very relaxing. And you'll see that kids do this when they're really young. They breathe only with their bellies. And we forget how to do this as adults. And here it is speeded up so you get a better idea. Now obviously these two are not separate, but I've separated them just so you can see. So chest breathing is much more subtle. This is what most of us do all day, day in, day out. When we should be, when we need to relax, we're stuck in traffic, we should go into our belly breathing. It has a profound effect on our well-being. But we can also practice chest breathing. I'll pause it there as well. Chest breathing is a lot about getting that diaphragm, getting those stretchy intercostal muscles, being able to take a nice big deep chest breath. And what we essentially do for freediving is we do first a belly breathe into the belly. It's all part of the same breath, and then into the chest. So it's first belly, then chest, and then even a little bit more into your shoulder blades. And that's what we call the one full breath. Okay, so I'll let Lou. Oh, I've gone back. Sorry, let me press go again on this and see if I can fast forward to where we were. Here we go. Oh, yeah. So this is Lou doing chest breaths. Fast forward. Full breath. She's done into the belly, into the chest, as she's dived down, and she's holding her breath for a little while, doing a dive. When she gets back to the surface, as free divers, we do something called recovery breaths. And Lou will demonstrate it. Let's just see what they look like. So Lou's just letting go of the air here. 1, 2, 3 recovery breaths, and then she gives a signal to say she's okay. So here's the whole thing. If you cast your mind back to that relaxation phase, the brain, we relax for a couple of minutes before we dive. So imagine Lou floating on the surface. Again, this is fast forwarded. Relax like a jellyfish. Now we're going to breathe into our belly first. All the same breath, and now we roll the breath into the chest. Nice big deep breath into the chest, and then we hold. And then we do a body scan and a relaxation again whilst we're holding our breath. And this is something you can practice on your own, on the floor, at home, or on a deep couch, somewhere where you can't fall off. You can practice this. So she's holding her breath, and then when she's finished, she's going to do her 3 recovery breaths. Now I'll show you how this looks in the water in a minute. I've got a video of her in the water. Okay, so before we see Lou in the water, I want to talk about equalization techniques. Now, some of you may have tried to dive down in the past and felt pain in your ears. I know I did when I was a kid in the deep end of the pool. And I don't know who taught me, but someone taught me how to equalize my ears. If you're a scuba diver, you already know you need to equalize your ears. And that's because this Boyle's law, as we go down through the water column, if we were to take this green balloon down through the water column, it's going to get squeezed and it'll look smaller. You know, the gas gets squeezed. And after 10 meters, if you look at the MT stands for meters, go down from 0 to 10 meters, we're already half the volume. And our lungs are going to look the same. If we start with a 6-liter breath hold, by the time we get to 10 meters of depth, our lungs will have squeezed down to 3 liters. But also we have a little bit of pressure in our sinuses and in our ears and in our mask. There's 3 areas we need to think about that we need to equalize. And the main one is the ear. So how do we equalize the ear? Well, what's actually happening is the inner ear here, I guess the area which is number 2, pressure builds up because it's an area which is which has kind of liquid and air in it inside the inner ear. And as we dive down, it builds up. And the eardrum, as you can see in this diagram, starts to stretch inwards. And that's the pressure that you're feeling when you're trying to dive down. So what we need to do is we need to actively put some air into the middle ear through our eustachian tubes. Now it's an absolute miracle and a wonder of nature that we have these eustachian tubes. I guess it's back to the fact that we evolved from the ocean. You know, we used to collect our food by diving down, and we come from the ocean, you know. And the fact that we're able to equalize the air within our bodies is a superpower. And you all have it. Very few people cannot do this. There's a very, very tiny percentage of people who have to have surgery to reopen their tubes, but most people with a bit of practice can do this. And there are two ways to do it. So before I tell you the two ways, firstly, we'll start at number one. You're gonna make air go through from your throat, mouth area, cheek, tongue, lips, all that area. You're gonna push air through your eustachian tube into the middle ear, and that's going to make that eardrum go straight and equalize the pressure. And the eardrum is normalized and we feel no more pressure, no more pain. And there are two ways to do it. The first way is Valsalva. And it's worth remembering these two. Firstly, they're going to be in the quiz at the end, so remember the two words. Valsalva you may have used if you've done diving. With scuba diving, you can just take another big suck of air on your tank at 10 meters depth, and you can do it again. Push hard, blow. It's like blowing your nose, but pinching hard on the nose whilst blowing your nose. That will do it. That will send air through those eustachian tubes. For free diving, and maybe you're having a go at this, have a little go, see if you can do this. But for free diving, and again, I haven't got time, there's 50 of you or more, I'm not sure. For free diving, you need to use something called Frenzel. And this is where we close the back of our throat after we've held our breath. Close the throat. There's a thing called the glottis where we close it. And then we use our tongue. You can see actually on the bottom diagram, the tongue of this person is locked against the teeth. And the air is only circulating the little red line inside the mouth and the lips, and the mouth is shut. And they pinch the nose. And what you're going to do is use your tongue like a piston to push up. And it's magical, and it will clear your ears. And you can do that. This is another thing that's great news. Now that if this is news to you, if you've never heard these two terms before, you now know that you need to get good at Frenzel. Okay, that's something that I've taught you, if nothing else. And you can Google Frenzel a bunch, and there's hundreds of videos on how to do Frenzel really well. And Frenzel equalization can take you down to more than 100 meters of depth freediving if you would so wish to get really good at it. There are other techniques that we can use, but Frenzel is fantastic. Okay, so those are the two ways. Again, I haven't got a huge amount of time to go into the detail of it, but we do need to do that, and we need to do it. So when do we need to do it? We need to do it before we even start to dive down. Okay, so we pre-equalize at the surface, and then we dive down, and we're going to equalize every single meter of descent. Now, this is a mistake people make as well. They think, oh, they just equalize, I just need to do it once, and they're good. But no, if you're going to dive down 6-8 meters, you should be equalizing or trying to equalize 6 to 8 times. Every meter, you equalize, meter, equalize, and you should be equalizing before you feel any pressure. So if you're feeling pain in your ears or even a buildup of uncomfortable pressure, stop, go back up. It's just not worth it. It's not the idea. There should be no pain, and really there should be no discomfort. So that's what we need to do. Yes.
All right, couple of questions.
By the way,
asking, are palpitations or irregular heart rhythms common with breath retention? I'm guessing breath holding in that question.
You know, if it's done right, I've had people come on freediving courses with me who have had heart trouble. I've had people come on freediving courses with me who have asthma. And generally, and I'm not a doctor, so you should go see your doctor. If you tick a thing on my little form that says I've had heart trouble, then I'm going to tell you to go see a doctor and get permission first. But essentially, usually what we find is with people who've had permission from their doctor and they've got the conditions, they come along, they find freediving is super helpful, because freediving teaches you this belly breathing. It teaches you to relax, and it teaches you to feel what it's like to hold your breath and to understand that, and to, you know, to truly relax. Someone said to me that freediving is like the ultimate test of meditation. And you don't even have to go freediving to get that. You can do that through apnea, through breath hold, because it's learning to overcome your inner fears and your worries and your concerns, and the urge to breathe can really feel very strong. Learn to calm your brain and have those things. So generally it's good for people like that, but obviously if you've got a condition, go see your doctor, get their advice before you go through that.
Just a quick one from Mike. He's just asking, is swallowing similar to the Frenzel method? It's
not. It's basically not. So Frenzel is actively holding your nose, closing your mouth, and pushing air with your tongue as a piston. It's called the T-lock. You lock your tongue against your teeth, and you have your tongue low in your mouth. The throat is closed after you've held your breath. And then with everything shut, throat closed, mouth closed, nose pinched, you push up with your tongue against your nose. Air should be coming as if it's coming to your nose, and then you should feel your ears clear. Swallowing will work if you're going up in an airplane, and it might work when you're diving, going a little bit, but essentially it won't work so well, especially going head first, because the air you're going head first needs to be pushed through those tubes. So look up Frenzel, and I'm going to be going into detail on it on this course in July. We're going to have a session on it, and I'm going to teach you all how to get good at it in a very short period of time.
Never thought about the fact that you're head first, actually. That's interesting. And the air will obviously go to the surface. That's interesting, yeah.
So the good thing is we're sort of getting there with what time's it now? Yeah, we've got 15 minutes left or so. So this is going to be a little video of Lou kind of doing everything first motion. So let's see how it goes. And this is a little bit about duck diving technique as well, and I'll break it down for you. So what I want you to notice here, well, you can see Lou's wearing the right stuff. She's got long fins on, weight belt. Oh, by the way, the weight belt you wear down over your hips. You don't wear it around your middle, around your belly, because obviously you need to do belly breathing. So what we do is we put it on around our waist, around our belly, nice and snug, and then we push it down over our hips, right over our hips, and above the belt, you should feel your hip bones. And what else is she doing here? You'll see that she takes her snorkel out. Notice that. Let's see if this little video will play for you. Hope it's not too juddery. So I've kind of fast forwarded this bit, but like a jellyfish, relaxation on the surface for at least 2 minutes. One full breath into the belly first, and then you continue the breath into the chest. Remove the snorkel. Pre-equalize. Okay, so you're pre-charging that little inner airspace, and that's going to give you the time you need to do the duck dive. Now this is the duck dive, and we're going to go through this again. You need forward momentum first of all, okay? So you've got to put your arms out in front of you and get some forward momentum. And once you're going forward, you then change that momentum into a fold. It's called a fold. So she's going to fold like a, in the middle. Now nothing's happened with the arms yet. She's still got them out in front of her. She lifts up her legs, then she does her arm pull. Now what this does is it pulls the fins down underwater, and then she can start to use the fins. So the finning comes last. Now again, I wish you were all here with me in the Caribbean. I could teach you one-on-one, and it would take me not very long. But if this hopefully is at least useful for you to see it.
Quick question.
Lou started
Sorry.
About 6 minutes. So yeah, no problem. I'll carry on with the question. I'll just let this play.
Sorry, Tom. Really good question from James. Why bother with a snorkel at all? Is it just that it allows you more relaxed posture in the water? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So some people don't bother with a snorkel once they're training with freediving. They do the breathe up on their back. But most people, when they're doing their breathe up, like Lou was here, you're relaxed on the front. In order for you to have a really floppy, relaxed shoulders, there's a whole bunch of stuff I need to go to about relaxation phase. So there's that 2-minute relaxation phase, which you can become a real expert at. It really is. It's about tune. It's like if you do yoga, then it's that kind of at the end of your yoga session when you're told to relax everything. You go through your body scan with every little toe, next toe, back of your knee, all the way through to your eyeballs. Make sure everything's super relaxed. That's what you should be doing on the surface between each dive. Everything floppy, super relaxed, because you want to be minimizing the use of oxygen. And the use of the snorkel allows you to face down float whilst breathing normally and relaxed. And then you just take out the snorkel. If you're comfortable breathing on your back and it's very calm, you don't need the snorkel, then leave it out. You can leave the snorkel behind.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's watch Lou again. So I missed a bit. She came up in a very relaxed way. I want you to notice that next time. Here she's reaching for the buoy, which is why it's important to have a buoy. And then she's going to do her 3 recovery breaths. So the recovery breaths are all about getting oxygen in and just passively exhaling. So we kind of breathe in fast and then passively exhale quite quickly, and then in fast again. And it feels silly, but all we're doing is we're making sure that we're low on oxygen. We want to get the oxygen in, okay? Because we're not, it's about making sure that if we were down there a long time and we come up and we are getting close to oxygen low levels, then we want to make sure we're getting the oxygen in so we don't sort of pass out. And then she's going to give 2 signals. Verbally, she's going to say, I'm okay, and she's going to give you a signal. That's another, we don't have mirrored masks as well, no low volume, no mirrored glass, so we can see the eyes. The eyes of your buddy will often tell you if they're fine, if they're really okay. After they've given a signal, they're smiling and have said they're okay. You need to keep monitoring them for another 20, 30 seconds to make sure they're okay, okay? And this is all good practice, and maybe you guys are going to get into freediving and start to dive down even deeper, but this would stand even if you're just going out for fun and doing little free dives 1 at a time, each taking turns, making sure you take 1.5 to 2 minutes between each dive. And this is in full speed. Notice Lou's put her hand back on her nose and she was equalizing again. I'll just get back to that bit and see what I'll show you again. You'll just notice she does a pre-equalization here, equalize, and then she does a duck dive. And as soon as she's finished her arm stroke, one of the arms goes back onto the nose. You can't see it very well. And she's equalizing, equalizing, equalizing every meter on the way down. On the way up, you don't need to do anything. It all happens naturally.
Tom, couple of questions. Sorry.
No, please interrupt. This is what we need. This is all for you. It's not for my benefit. I know all this is for you guys. So no question is silly.
Grant was just asking, like, how does the float stay where it is? Is it attached to something?
Yeah. So this is the one that's absolute basic minimum. I have a waist loop that's around me with a line attached to the float. I should really have a little flag attached to this with a dive flag on it. And I do have, when I'm teaching freediving, I have a much bigger float, a big buoy with rope in it, and we have a weight, and we put the line down. It's adjustable weight, and we have a line. And when we're diving down deeper than 10 meters, for those of you who are interested to do more of this, you're going to have a rope and a weight hanging down on the rope at the bottom, and a tennis ball to stop you from going too deep. And you're going to have a lanyard, like a little Velcro lanyard clipped to the rope, so that if you're floating off down into the depths, you can't come off the rope. You're always attached to the rope. So below 8-10 meters, you should have that line and rope and all that stuff, that safety in place. So yeah, this is absolute basic. I wanted to run this course though to anyone. Anyway, if you're just out snorkeling, this is enough just for you to dive down 6 to 8 meters. But it should definitely be attached to you at all times. And not diving.
James, Chris is just asking that she knows Lou's not breathing out on the way back up again. Is that usual?
That's usual. Yeah, keep the air in right up until you get to the surface. Don't breathe out at all. There's 2 reasons. It's tempting to let some air out as you get close to the surface because you want to let air out so that you're ready to breathe again. But actually, it's best practice until you get to, again, world-class level. You make your own decisions then. But it's best practice to hold the air in all the way until you've reached the surface, then do your recovery breaths. The reason being is that letting air out at any stage underwater is actually a warning sign to me as an instructor or as your buddy. I'll tell you why. Let me tell you something amazing. If you pass out underwater, and you'll know this, those of you who've got kids and you've probably pushed them underwater when they were kids, and amazingly, they don't breathe in the water. They automatically hold their breath and they don't breathe in the water, even as a 1-2-year-old, you know. And we're the same as adults. If we hold our breath, and this in all my freediving career out in open water, I've never seen it happen, but if you pass out underwater, this is what happens. You do not breathe in. Your body just passes out whilst you're holding your breath, and what will happen is you will let the air out. So air will start bubbling out because you relax and you pass out, but then your glottis will automatically shut. This is amazing. If this didn't happen, ladies and gentlemen, if this didn't magically happen, we wouldn't be able to do freediving as a sport. It would be too dangerous. Just consider that for a moment, because you take in water, right? That doesn't happen. This is why you see people pushing it and they get down to 130 meters plus. Women and men are very close with the world record, by the way. So this is a good sport to push and get the world record if you're a budding female freediver. So that's why we, to answer the question, that's why we don't let out air on the way up, because it's a sign that maybe you've lost control and you've passed out. Because if you pass out, bubbles start coming out. Hope that answers the question.
A question from James, the same question I've got on the top of my mind actually, is how do you know when it's time to come up? Like, how do you know you've got enough time to get back up safely?
The best thing, James, is to practice your static breath hold on the couch, in the pool with a buddy, or in the pool with a buddy. If you're going to be practicing holding your breath in the water, even super sheltered water like a pool, you need to be with someone who really knows what they're doing. And I can't cover the detail of that, so I can't give you my blessing to go and do it in the pool, honestly. But if you're doing it on the couch dry, you can practice on your own, and you can start to time yourself of a breath hold. And you could say, right, I'm hitting 1.5 minutes before I get really uncomfortable. When you're in the water, as soon as you start to feel that first discomfort, that first real strong urge to breathe, go up. Remember, it's all about not pushing it. You shouldn't be pushing it when you're in the water. You can push it when you're lying on the floor, on the comfy rug, on your couch, something you can't fall off of. Even on your own, you can just hold your breath for as long as you can. And then you can notice how it feels. When does the panic set in? When does my body start having contractions? These are quite incredible as well. The body literally starts to move itself as if it wants to breathe. And as a rule of thumb, if you really want to know, when you get your first proper contraction, involuntary movement, you're probably halfway through your oxygen usage. So for me, I'm lucky. I get my first contractions because I've trained my whole life in the water, surfing and all these things. I get my first contractions at around about 2.5, 3 minutes. And so I know I've got another 3 minutes before I pass out at least. As I said, I reached 6.5 minutes. And it's about learning that in a pool. Now, when I go out freediving in the ocean, I very rarely dive more than 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. Okay? So it's about knowing yourself. It's about knowing what you can do. If your maximum breath hold is 30 seconds dry, then out in the ocean, you probably want to be diving down for 15 seconds, just bring it right back. Just err on the side of caution whilst you get better at it. It's like a skill, like anything else. You can get better at it by practicing.
One last question just on here. Francis just asking as another really good one. How does body composition or health affect you when you're trying to extend time underwater?
It's a great question. And this is why freediving becomes a way of life for many people, because it informs you. It's like the ultimate test, isn't it? If you can really overcome your mind game of wanting to breathe, but there's also the physical game. If you increase your lung capacity by stretching, by being healthy, by not eating too much dairy, because that can bung up your sinuses and make it difficult to equalize, stay fit and well, that's going to make you a better freediver for sure. And the more you get into freediving, the more that will inform how you live your life. And it becomes a lifestyle, becomes a way of life. And all the top athletes in freediving, they're all super fit and really amazing athletes. So yeah, it really has a big effect on informing that and helping you to see where you are and see improvements.
Tom, we've got other questions coming in there. I'm just conscious of the time, so I'll let you crack on, and then if we have time at the end, we can go through the other ones.
Great. So I want to just cover very briefly emergencies. Again, this is too much information really for you guys, but I'm just going to cover it for those of you who might find this interesting. So what can go wrong? I've made another little diagram here. Blackout. So how do we avoid a blackout? I've already told you, avoid hyperventilation. Go easy. Don't push it especially when you're in the ocean. Recovery breathing, and know yourself is another one. Do your recovery breathing. It feels silly, but do it. I do it every time I dive down. And practice your rescue techniques, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Loss of motor control. That's kind of the bit where you get before you get a blackout, where you feel a bit funny. Maybe you starting to lose motor control. Again, you should have flotation when you're going out practicing. You should again do your recovery breaths and go easy, and that should avoid having any loss of motor control, any low levels of oxygen that start to affect your ability to be fully conscious. But if you do black out, you're just fainting, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You just need to tap someone, tell them to breathe, and they'll be fine as long as you're there with them. Obviously, use the proper equipment. It's the light blue one there. A nice thick wetsuit. Don't get cold. If you're getting cold, get out. You're not going to be able to hold your breath and dive down for a good amount of time and enjoy yourself and be relaxed if you're cold. So just, wear the proper kit. Go to a safe venue. and have a good buddy. Barotrauma is where you can damage your ears or your lungs. Now, if you're diving down 6 to 8 meters, you're very unlikely to have any other barotrauma than your ears. And that's, I've said already, just go easy, use Frenzel. If it hurts, stop, go back up, and don't dive with congestion. Now, I took these two guys out on a freediving course, and this was the very first time they ever did a little rescue. I wanted to show you what it looks like, and this is kind of towards the end of my content, and then we've got a little quiz. So this is simulating someone who's had a blackout, but they're both all super happy here. Approach from below. Let me just pause that because I'm speaking too much. I'll let you watch it. Let me just go back. I'll just let it play. Essentially what Lars is doing here is pushing her up to the surface. And he's doing that by keeping straight arms so that his fins can work well underneath hers. And he's just getting her to the surface any which way he can. But the official way is to have fingers on the mask and on the chin, one hand on the back of the head, tilt the head forward and push them up to the surface. If you need to take their weight belt off or your weight belt off, go ahead and do that. But that shouldn't be necessary with what we're talking about here with the remit of this course. Once you get them to the surface, you can see that we've got our line in place here because we've been going down deeper. And this is my proper freediving buoy, which is a much better buoyancy thing. So I'm going to use the buoyancy to keep her airways out of the water while Lars is here. And the next thing he's going to do is remove the mask. Now the body is amazing. The human body now knows, the face feels that it's back in the air. And now the first thing the body's going to want to do is breathe. Okay, so that if they'd stopped breathing, let out, and they were underwater and they passed out, and once they reach the air, they're going to want to breathe. So this is why hopefully they took their snorkel out. You're going to now remove the mask and give them a little blow and a tap and a talk, and just say to them, breathe, breathe, because the last thing to go is the hearing. And they've just passed out and fainted. They haven't taken on any water. There's no danger here. Nothing bad has happened really. It's like fainting, you know. So yeah, so that's all you do. That's literally, yeah, I kind of skipped, it's annoying when that happens. So let me just go through that last bit of the video again. I'll fast forward, approach from below. I'm just going to fast forward. Yeah, one hand on the front on the mask, under the armpit there, the other one on the back of their head, push them to the surface, tilt their head forward a little bit, extend your arms straight so that your fins are not getting tied up with theirs, and so on and so forth. And she's having fun, she's laughing and smiling. Okay, the next thing we do is remove the mask. This is going to further get the face out in the water, and the body itself will remember, oh yeah, okay, it's okay to breathe now. And then you just blow, tap, talk gently. You don't need to yell at them, just blow, tap, talk. Okay, so I just wanted you to see us practicing rescues, and this is what we do. We go out and we practice these things so that in the event that something does happen, we've covered it. So there we go. So hopefully it's been a whistle-stop tour. I've really enjoyed the questions that you guys have thrown in. So thank you for throwing in the questions. I have covered hopefully some essential safety about buddying and taking a float. I've talked a little bit about breathing cycle, belly breathing, relaxation phase, how to do the one full breath and so on, recovery breaths. I've talked a bit about Frenzel and Valsalva and how that Frenzel is the one that we want to use for freediving, learning how to do it properly. And we do it every meter. And I've talked about the duck dive and risks and rescue. It's been a whistle-stop tour, but that's kind of me in a nutshell with this little intro to freediving. I mean, as I said, I was one of the worst people. I had various close calls with doing it all wrong. So my biggest hope is that some of you have learned something from this that you can take away from this little course with you. I'd really love to help you to improve with your freediving, and I can only do that with a smaller group and in a longer course. So I'm going to, yeah, I've done this course for charity because I wanted to do this for World Oceans Week, part of World Oceans Week, and money goes to Sea Shepherd. The next course is just going to be 1 hour, once a week, every Monday. And I wanted to shout out to Lou. This photo was me freediving with very little equipment. You notice I'm not even wearing a weight belt, and I don't have a snorkel. And that's because I was in 5,000 meters of water as we sailed across the Atlantic on a day when we were becalmed. So I didn't want to wear any weights. I wanted to be super floaty. And yeah, it was one of my most amazing images, just coming up from about 10 meters. Lou was there to take a photo. We had a line out of the back of the boat. We took our sails down, so don't worry, everyone. I was doing it safely. So anyway, so just a quick upsell. Freediving online course starts on Monday, July the 4th. It's the same time, 8 p.m. UK time. It's 1 hour once a week, and it'll all be recorded. So if you miss one, doesn't matter, you'll get the recording. And essentially it's going to cover in more detail the essentials in no particular order. We're going to have a workshop on holding our breath properly, and I'll show you how to do that safely and properly on your own. And we'll talk about how to train CO2 tolerance for those of you who want to start diving down and spending more time with the kelp and the turtles or whatever it is. And we'll have a workshop on Frenzel in amongst that 4-week course. And what I'm quite excited about is we'll talk about why you should bother to get good at this, why you should enact your superpower of opening your eustachian tubes and being able to hold your breath for a long time. There's something called the mammalian dive reflex, which I want to talk about more about. It's literally real magic that we have as humans, that we are able to hold our breath longer when we're in the water than we are out of the water. So I want to go into more detail about that. But there'll be a module on wildlife that you can see in the UK, Europe and the Caribbean, with incredible photos from my wife Lou, who's a marine biologist. She takes all her images freediving, and so we can share with you. So even if you're not ever going to go freediving, you just want to come along for the social, learn about it, you're going to learn a lot, and you'll see some nice images. It should be a really fun little course, 1 hour once a week. I think it's going to be around about 40 quid for those of you who are interested in the price. We'll send it out, that's for the whole course. We'll send it out with an email and everything else. Oh, this is one of Lou's images taken out of the Smalls in Pembrokeshire, for those of you who know that area, where the seals were coming up to us so close. It was incredible. We were just gently holding onto the kelp down there and freediving with the seals. It was a magical experience. And this was one of Lou's award-winning images. So yeah, I don't know how we're doing on time. We're a little bit over, my bad. So we're 5 minutes over. But there's a little quiz, just 8 questions, just for fun. If you want to hang around for that, Steve, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tom. That was fascinating, and some nice comments coming through from Marie. Thank you very much. For people that are keen, in the join instructions, you just said that you need to have access to a phone where you can just look at Kahoot, K-A-H-O-O-T. So if you want to type that into your phone now, we'll do the quiz. Just whilst people are doing that, it'll ask you for a code, and I'll put that on the screen in a minute. For everybody that's here tonight, just for you folk, if you're keen to do this course, there's actually a discount code which I'll send out with it, called Friends25. That'll take 25% off. So it is £40 for any of the online courses that we do, but that means that you can get it for £30, and it's valid until midnight on Sunday. But after that, it'll go to the normal price. So we'll be pushing it out to people who, in addition to who's here as well. So the recording of this session, along with how to join on the course, will be sent out to you first thing in the morning on the email that you use to register. Okay, if you want to stop sharing there for a second, Tom, and I'll put
done that. And then if you unpin me.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if you'd like to take part in the quiz, it will ask you for a PIN number, and the PIN number is just coming up on the screen now. It is 7435126. Some of you that have done courses with me before will have done this before. It's fairly intuitive. There'll be a question that will come up. Tom will read out the question, and there'll be 4 possible answers. And they're different colors. So whatever color you think is the right answer, press that color on your phone. There's 2 things you need to do to win the quiz, because it's competitive. 1, you have to get the answer right, and 2, you need to be the fastest person to answer. But if you accidentally press the wrong button, you cannot unpress it. So I hope you've all been paying attention tonight. I'm not taking part in the quiz because I didn't. Oh no, we won it last time, actually, didn't we? So I know what the questions are, so I'm not going to take part. But it should be a good little review of everything that we've done so far. Okay, I think that looks like that's. Oh, still people joining. I'll just give it another minute or so, and then we'll make a start. Okay, right, we're going to make a start then, folks.
Okay. Okay, true or false? It's okay to go freediving alone as long as you inform someone where you're going. So it's about speed. Hit the button, the right one. Yeah, you've got to get the right answer and do it fast. There's a picture of me freediving from the back of my boat there.
Okay.
Great, answers are in. So it's not okay to go freediving on your own, folks. Always go with someone else.
Looks like Matt's in the lead.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay, this is a quiz. The best way to test if you're not overweighted is choose the right answer. Choose the right answer. Good answer. So the difference is it's the answer's red, passively exhale, and that's because when we talk about passively exhaling, it's not blowing all the air out, that's actively exhaling. You just do a gentle passive exhale and then see if you still float. If you're not floating, you're wearing too much weight. And that is floating around here with your airways above the water.
that's mixed everything up a bit.
True or false? While breathing, saturation of your blood with oxygen is between 96 to 99% at any time. Great, you all got the right answer. So this is even if someone is asleep, and you don't need to hyperventilate to get more oxygen in. It's a complete fallacy. It doesn't help, it makes it worse. Well done. So you've got to collect multi-select more than one right answer here, probably. So read hyperventilation lowers CO2 levels, delaying the urge to breathe. Is that the correct answer? So what's the question here? Yeah, no, choose the correct answers. Only one that's wrong, just to give you a clue. Okay, so anyway, hyperventilation does not, yeah, most of you were right on that one. It's good. Poppy's up in the lead. Well done, Poppy. It's exciting. I love these little quiz. It's great. Select the statements related to the prevention of blackouts and loss of motor control. Again, multiple answers. Choose the ones that make sense to you. Well done, guys. Great. Okay. Yeah, it was all of them. Next. So, which three airspaces does a diver need to equalize on descent? I didn't cover this much, but hopefully you can make a good educated guess. Okay, so the answer was mask, sinus, ears. And that is because we don't need to do our lungs. They're just squidgy. They go squidgy small and then squidgy big again. We don't need to worry about the bends or anything like that, like divers do, because we're not taking in any more air. We start with a full lung, go down, it squeezes, go back up, it's back the same size. So it's just inside the mask, we're letting a little bit of air out of your nose. The sinuses happen naturally, and the ears you have to do with Frenzel or Valsalva. Valsalva can work, but it's not as good as Frenzel. I just talked about this. You should get this right now. Which of the techniques can be used? So they can be used. One's better than the other, but they can be used. Two correct answers here. Well done. Good. I think that might be it. Any more? Oh no, 2 more.
2 more.
So multi-select this one. Choose the correct answers. Just one wrong answer here, folks. Well done. Poppy. Oh, it's close.
Last one.
Seen out of the park. So to rescue a blackout diver, get them to the surface, keep airways out of the water, remove the mask, then blow tap talk. True or false? It's not a trick question. Doesn't matter if you don't remember any of the details of how to do that. As long as you do what that says, get them to the surface, remove any facial equipment, snorkel, mask, whatever, blow tap talk, then you'll be there. You'll be being a good buddy with them. Right, third place is Rogie. Matt, second place. And the first place, Poppy. Well done. Fantastic.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. That was absolutely fascinating. I can't wait until the course starts. Just a quick reminder, folks, I'll email everybody that's here. I'll email you a link to the recording, so that'll be available to watch for 1 week, up to 1 week later. If you're interested in doing the course, there'll be a link on there. And if you want to find out more about Tom or you want to contact him directly, there'll be a link on there to his website, and you can find out more about free diving and what him and Lou are up to as well. So thank you very much, Tom, and thank you everybody for some brilliant questions. That was it was really good, some really good questions coming through there. A fascinating topic. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. Big shout out to you for helping put this together, and thanks for everyone for coming. I think we raised over 150 quid for Sea Shepherd, so that's awesome. So really well done. Yeah, and one last thing to say is I'm out here in Martinique. If anyone fancies coming out to the Caribbean, we're on a sailing boat, and we can do freediving courses in person, which is how we love to do it the best. But in the meantime, hopefully I'll see you on Monday, the 4th of July for a little 4-week taster on freediving.
But got several people on there say that they're definitely going to sign up, so that's great. It'll be great to see you folks then, and we can get into.
Yeah, you can help us keep going with this sailing around the world plan. That would be amazing, and learn something along the way.
Thank you, Tom. We're gonna sign off now. Thanks very much. Any questions or comments, then please drop us a message. I'll stop the recording there, and that's us done for the night. Have a lovely weekend, everybody.